orden, familia. Salud.
Hello, my name is John, and I'm your one-stop shop for action movies, comic book movies, and the occasional horror movie reviews and rankings, and pretty much anything else that I decide to talk about. And just a little quick disclaimer here. I'm not including animated movies, so there won't be any Iron Giant. It's a great movie, but I'm not including it. And I'm also not including animated roles in live action movies. So there won't be any Groot. I love Groot, but there won't be any MCU movies for that matter. And then there won't be any cameos, so no Tokyo Drift. And then I did re-watch Saving Private Ryan, but Vin Diesel's only in like the first third of the movie, and he's really only in like a third of that. So I'm not including that either. That being said, it's one of the greatest war movies of all time, and it's might be my favorite Spielberg movie. So I still, even though it's not in this ranking, I still highly recommend checking out Saving Private Ryan if you haven't seen that already. And I've probably wasted enough time already, so let's just get into this and let's get started.
You listen to my one and only rule. Don't fuck with me.
And so coming in last place is Babylon AD. Now this is just a complete shit show of a movie, in my opinion. You know, the script, it's decent, it lacks depth, but it was decent enough until they got to New York, and then they threw the script out the window, and the main girl was becoming a pregnant virgin and stopping missiles with a force field that she never has at any other point in this movie, even though it would have came in handy at almost any scene in this movie. And the action scenes, they're like trying to do this Bourne-like quick-paced editing, and they fail miserably at it. You just get a bunch of weird quick shots. You can't see anything happening. It kind of gives you a headache.
What? I'm going down.
And so coming in 20th place, I believe, is Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Now this is a movie, I wasn't sure if I would include it on this ranking. I hadn't seen it before, and I didn't even realize Vin Diesel was in this movie until I was looking up this list of movies. This is a movie that has a lot of potential, and it's a story that deserves to be a great and have a great movie. This just is far from that. There's like a sex scene with this national anthem in the background. It's weird. I know this is based off of a true story. That being said, it was just executed in a very cheesy manner, and I know it's supposed to have this huge technological achievement thing with this frame rate and everything, the way it's shot. I don't know how to describe it. It looks cheap to me. Even though it's supposed to be this big technological thing, it looks almost cheap to me. And so coming in at number 19 is The Pacifier. This is a movie I remember liking when it originally came out and everything. I hadn't watched it in years, but I remember liking it when I was younger. I don't know, the acting is terrible, and I think it's a harmless movie that young kids can enjoy and everything, but there's just way too many poop jokes for me, honestly. And then you do have some funny moments, like the moments between Vin Diesel and the like vice principal wrestling coach. But overall, it's just I don't know, it just feels off. If I'm gonna watch an action star watching kids comedy, I'm gonna throw on The Game Plan or something else, maybe Kindergarten Cop as well. I'm never gonna throw on this if I'm in the mood. I'm never in the mood for those types of movies, but if I ever am, I'm not gonna throw on this one.
So yet again, we play for blood.
Now coming in at number 18 is 2013's Riddick. Now I did talk about this one a little bit in my Riddick trilogy ranking. And overall, I just think when it's trying to be a Chronicles of Riddick follow-up, it works pretty well with the Vaco background and everything. When it's trying to be Pitch Black 2.0 and a follow-up of Pitch Black, it loses me. The alien creatures aren't nearly as interesting as Pitch Black's creatures. Now coming in at number 17 is Strays. Now this is the oldest movie on the list, and it's actually even directed by Vin Diesel. It's also, I'm also 99% sure it's the lowest budget movie on this list. But it's basically a Woody Allen romantic drama, except all of the guys are very buff and muscular. That's basically what this is. And that's just not my type of genre. Romantic dramas are my least favorite genre. It doesn't keep you engaged at all. There's not really a good score to do that. The acting is decent enough, I guess. You got Mike Epps, who does have a couple comedic moments, even though this isn't really a comedy. But one of the big things with this is the cinematography. There's a couple weird shots where they're like having a nice romantic stroll, holding hands, and and they're trying to focus on their face because they're talking, and it like cuts off their head like halfway through. And now coming in at number 16 is The Last Witch Hunter. Now this is a movie I have a decent enough time watching in all honesty, but it's not very good. There's some shoddy VFX in here. Overall, it just feels like a throwaway, forgettable fantasy story starring Vin Diesel. And I just don't necessarily think this is his best genre. And there's not really any good development in this movie either. So it makes stuff towards the end just kind of fall pretty flat. And so coming in at number 15 is The Fate of the Furious. Now these Fast and Furious movies I'm going to spend a quick time on in this ranking. I recently posted a Fast and Furious ranking with much more extended thoughts. This is one of my favorite franchises of all time. And so I have a lot of thoughts. So go ahead and check out that ranking if you haven't already. But just quickly, I don't like the way Cypher is used in this movie. You have Charlize Theron, one of the best female action stars of today. Just action stars in general, regardless of gender. And she's just stuck behind a computer the entire movie rather than getting involved in the action. And then just the timeline of things. The baby should not be as young as it is, unless Dom cheated on Letty, which is not something he would do. So this is just a movie, even though I really do enjoy it when I watch it, it's a movie that frustrates me quite a bit as a big Fast and Furious and Charlize Theron fan. And so coming in at number 14, we have Triple X Return of Xander Cage. You got some very shoddy acting in this movie. Actually pretty bad acting in this movie. You know, although I do think it's one of Ruby Rose's best performances. That being said, she hasn't had very many good performances. This movie has a couple nice, like, martial arts actors that you would think would add some great action and great fight scenes in this movie. And that's just not really the case. Donnie Yen does get a great fight scene in the plane towards the end. But like Tony Jaa's in this movie, but he's not, he never really gets he doesn't really fight anybody. He just does cheerleader tumbler routines. And they also kind of go away from that original punk rock tone of that first Triple X movie. And this feels much more like they're trying to create a Fast and Furious 2.0 type of franchise, where the first Fast and Furious was much more rebel in terms of hip-hop tone, whereas the first Triple X movie was much more of a punk rock, punk metal type of tone. And I think it kind of takes away from some of that aesthetic that made me a fan of the original movie. And so coming in at number 13 is Pitch Black. Now this is one I'm pretty sure most people would put a little higher on this list, if not much higher. This movie does have quite a few fans. And I think based off of the second half of this movie, once the sun's set, I understand why. It becomes a great sci-fi alien creature feature with Vin Diesel and these group of people trying to fend off all of these thousands of aliens and stuff. The problem with this movie is everything before the sun's set, everything in the first half, just the cinematography, the lighting, all of that, I just find very, very uncomfortable to look at and to watch.
Pussy.
And so coming in at number 12 is Fast and Furious, the fourth movie in the Fast and Furious franchise. And like I've said many times, this is a franchise that is very near and dear to my heart. But this movie, I just don't think it's aged well, especially with the direction of the Letty character in the later sequels. And just the visual look of this movie, I don't entirely enjoy that much. It's a little too shadowy for me, at least for a Fast and Furious movie. It's a little too shadowy. And the cave sequences, just the VFX in them and everything, they're just not executed very well. That being said, I absolutely adore the opening scene to this movie. It's probably the best in the franchise. And so coming in at number 11 is A Man Apart. This is a movie with a lot of heart in it. They do a good job displaying that. And you got a different looking Vin Diesel here. He's got like a nice goatee going on in this movie. But overall, it's just a very generic, like, cop action thriller. And there's not too much memorable aspects to separate it apart and stand out among that genre. That being said, it's a genre I really do enjoy quite a bit. And there's some decent action in it. The acting isn't always the best, but the ending has got a great badass ending to it with him in, I believe, Mexico, maybe Panama or something. But it's got a very badass ending to it. So kicking off the top 10 Vin Diesel movies is Knock Around Guys. Now, if you've ever wanted to see a bunch of New York mobsters take over a town in Montana because a couple stoners accidentally stole their money, then this is a movie. Now that sounds a little ridiculous of a premise, and as someone that grew up in a small Midwestern town, I'm not the biggest fan of some of the portrayals of some of these characters. That being said, I think there's a lot of enjoyment in this movie, even though it does make some errors and some distracting choices, because they have, is it Seth Green, who's like a ginger, but yet they like dye his hair like jet black, and that's very distracting. So you do have a lot of issues and distracting stuff in this movie like that, but overall, I honestly had a lot of enjoyment and a blast watching this. But overall, I'm not a big mafia or mob movie person. And this is a much different approach to that because it has them in Montana. And some people might not like that, but personally, I think it's a nice change of pace within this genre. coming in at number 9, we have The Chronicles of Riddick. Now, this is my favorite Riddick movie, maybe excluding the animated short Dark Fury. That might be my favorite, but it actually changes up the genre quite a bit from the original movie. It turns it more from sci-fi into space fantasy. That being said, there's some issues with the action, with some of the action. The way it's edited, you can kind of lose some. It's not nearly as bad as Babylon AD, but you can lose some of the geography of the landscape in the action scenes. But there are some nice one-liners thrown in there. And so coming in at number 8, we have this year's movie, the newest Vin Diesel movie, Bloodshot. Now, I was a lot more positive on this movie coming out of when I first watched it than most people seemed to be. That being said, there's some issues with it that I can't really defend. There's some shoddy development with the characters. There's some shoddy VFX in the movie as well. That being said, I do enjoy watching the characters. I'm a big Isa Gonzalez fan. Baby Driver, one of my favorite movies of all time. And ever since that movie, I've been looking forward to seeing more from Isa Gonzalez. And I was also a big fan of Lamorne Morris's character. He's a nice comedic addition to the cast. There are a lot of cool action scenes in here with kind of the way they're shot, particularly when he raids towards the beginning, when you have that raid and he goes to kill that first guy that he kills, not the first guy, but goes to kill the guy in the SUV. I'm blanking on the guy's name, and you just have that, and you have this nice red aesthetic, kind of red-blue type of aesthetic going on with the flares and stuff that they create. And it's just a cool, really cool, nice action scene, and you got a couple things like that in this movie.
It was a pleasure doing business with you. Done and done.
And so coming in at number 7 is Boiler Room. Now, I'd just like to mention, these top 7 are there's a decent enough jump from 8. There's a decent jump between 8 and 7, in all honesty. I think the top 7 are in my opinion, the definitive top 7 for Vin Diesel movies. And at number 7 is Boiler Room. And it's a really good Wall Street movie. That being said, if I'm in the mood for a Wall Street movie, I'm going to throw on The Big Short, The Wolf of Wall Street, or Wall Street or something. But when you search Boiler Room, Vin Diesel's the first person that pops up. Nowadays it feels like a Vin Diesel movie for some reason, even though he's not actually in the movie a whole lot. But he does have some of the best scenes, and he's very integral to the ending of the movie as well. But overall, I just don't find it very memorable of a movie. Particularly, I don't think the cast is as good as it should have been or could have been. You kind of just have Phoebe's brother from Friends, I don't know if you saw that, I don't know why I did that, as the main character.
You've just entered the Xander Zone.
And so coming in at number 6, I have the original XXX movie. Now, I'm probably a bigger fan than most people of this movie, given some of the scores I see with it, with its Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb. Even the audience score is pretty low. So I think I'm a bigger fan of this than most. But I love the tone and aesthetic they go for with this movie. I'll acknowledge the acting isn't perfect, but I love the tone and aesthetic this movie's going for, that punk rock, punk metal. Even though those aren't necessarily go-to music genres for me, I'm much more of a hip-hop and pop punk rather than punk rock person. But as an aesthetic for a movie, I really love it. I think the vehicular stunt work in this movie is very, very good. And I know there's some ridiculous stuff, like people doing X Games tricks on on motorbikes in the middle of a big action set piece. But I think it's used in a way that is, while yes, it's ridiculous, it's also fun because they're doing the tricks to kick people in midair, and I don't know, I have fun with it, and I just think it's very well executed. A lot of the action set pieces and the explosions are timed well and everything. And I also think this is just kind of a nice, like, punk rock or punk metal version of James Bond movie. And now kicking off the top 5 is The Fast and the Furious. This is another movie I grew up watching a lot and DVRing a lot on cable. And much like Triple X, I think the vehicular stunt work and vehicular action in this movie is executed very well. And I think that's on display, particularly in the highway robbery scene towards the end. I really do like this movie. I don't think Michelle Rodriguez's acting in this movie is as good as her later movies and later sequels in this franchise, but overall, I do have a lot of nostalgia and a lot of love for this original Fast and Furious movie. And so coming in at number 4 is Fast and Furious 6. Now, I was debating. I actually did not know between 3 and 4 which one I'd have where, but I decided basically just a second ago while recording this. I decided to add a little more franchise, a little more movie and genre diversity in my top 3. In all honesty, I really love this movie. It's got some great action scenes, some very memorable moments. And something I forgot to mention in my Fast and Furious ranking video. This is probably my favorite lineup, but it does kind of become somewhat forgettable because I think even though Owen Shaw, I think, is one of the best villains in the franchise, he's drastically overshined by his brother in later sequels, and it's just a movie that gets lost between 5 and 7 for me.
May I have a sidebar?
I ordered creamy peanut butter, and they brought me chunky.
And so coming in at number 3, we are now in the top 3, is Find Me Guilty. This is a nice courtroom dramedy, I would say, because there's a lot of comedic elements. There's some dramatic elements as well. It's much more of a dramedy as opposed to just one of those genres on their own. But I think this is easily Vin Diesel's best performance. And I think it's a fun movie. He's got a pretty funny performance. His comedic talent is actually better than I originally thought, given The Pacifier. But this is another movie I actually watched for the first time preparing for this ranking. And I was blown away by how much I actually enjoyed it. It's it's easily his most underrated movie. Everyone should check this movie out. It's a great courtroom movie. It's a great dramedy. And it's even a movie directed by a classic director, Sidney Lumet, who directed 12 Angry Men and movies like Dog Day Afternoon. And so it's just a nice little underrated Vin Diesel performance and movie that I was blown away by how much I ended up loving it.
Salute me, familia. Salute.
And so coming in at number 2 is Fast 5. And like I said, in my Fast and Furious ranking, these top 2 movies, you could honestly probably say they're tied for number 1 for me. This is just a fantastic action movie. It's got some great moments in it, and it's got a lot of heart to it. Whole family dynamic, the way the characters are introduced, the team dynamic in it, the fact that they all have some nice, clearly defined roles for being in the movie. The only thing that kind of holds it back from being number 1 is the villain. He's not really a villain, he's just a Rio mobster that they steal money from.
I used to say I lived my life a quarter mile at a time. And I think that's why we were brothers.
Coming in at number 1 is Furious 7. I absolutely adore this movie. I've seen it so many times and I never get tired of it. It's not gonna maybe crack my top 10 movies of all time, but it's easily within like my top 5 most rewatched in ratio to when it was released, at least. I absolutely love and adore this movie. It's got my favorite soundtrack of all time. And I just love how the family theme is felt so much throughout this movie. Whether it's Brian's storyline and him coping with being a family man and driving minivans, or whether it's Dom's storyline about avenging Han's death and protecting his family, or even the villain in this movie, Jason Statham's Deckard Shaw, is motivated by family getting revenge for his brother. And so family is just this theme, is so thematically felt throughout this movie, in my opinion. And I just love this movie for that particular reason, is one of them. And even the action scenes, I think, are executed very well. Yes, they're kind of crazy and bonkers, but the execution of them is very well done. We got a nice fight scene between Tony Jaa and Paul Walker that I love. You get like this nice melee fight scene with like wrenches between Vin Diesel and Jason Statham towards the end. You have the classic jumping through 2 buildings in a supercar moment, which is crazy and bonkers, but it's executed well. And I love Furious 7 so much, and that is why it comes in at number 1 and is my favorite Vin Diesel movie. Thanks for watching this video. I would really appreciate it if you left a comment on your thoughts on Vin Diesel movies. Whether you think his movies are shit, whether you really enjoy his movies. Just tell me your thoughts, your favorites of his, your opinions on any of these movies. And I'd really appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up icon, smash that thumbs up icon, because this was a big endeavor for me as a small YouTuber. But I love watching big rankings like this. I'm a big fan of like the 31 on 31 stuff that Cody Leach does. But I don't want to be a copycat, so I'm trying to find other things to do. And so smash that subscribe button if that interests you, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with my videos and rankings. And I have a big Christmas themed ranking that I want to hopefully do for Christmas, because I'm a big fanatic of Christmas and the holiday season. So stay tuned for that, and I will return next time when I see you again.